Okay, it is 6 p.m. May 16th, it's a regular assembly meeting, the Petersburg Borough. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mark,
Here.
Chelsea,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
David,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Jay,
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a full assembly present in the assembly chambers tonight. It's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have approval of minutes from May 2nd. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
If there's no changes, all those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes from May 2nd are approved. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? And if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Member Lynn.
Yes, I would like to add a discussion item at the end of it related to ending comment period at Papke's Landing for the draft that's out. Thank you.
Okay, clerk, remind me if I missed that. Any other
Mr. Mayor.
amendments? Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under council discussion item, talk about the possibility of sending a letter from the Borough and the Chamber of Commerce to the Nat Geo cruise lines, welcoming them to town and hopefully clearing up any misconceptions about their visits in town.
Okay, sounds good. 2 discussion items added. Any other changes to today's agenda? I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda tonight as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move forward as amended. Today we have a public hearing. It's on ordinance 2022-07. This is an ordinance adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. Any public testimony regarding ordinance 2022-07 should be given during this public hearing. A copy of the ordinance may be found under agenda item 14C. Is there anyone in the audience or anyone on the line, Clerk Thompson, that would like to participate in this public hearing? Okay, Kate, and then we'll go to the next gentleman. Yeah, you have to state your name, come to the podium, state your name, who you represent, and you have 5 minutes.
I see that. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. For the record, my name is Catherine Kowalski. I'm here this evening representing myself, and I'm here in opposition to any cuts that would happen to the police department, if any. So it's been a good day. I woke up this morning and I saw the President of the United States recognizing police officers and firefighters. It was awesome. It was a great way to start my day. In the 33 years that I've practiced as a pharmacist from Colorado to Anchorage to here, I would be remiss if I didn't come and show my support and thanks to the police department for their professionalism, dedication, and help where and when it has been needed in my line of work. Likewise, I would like to thank their families who humble their hearts day in and day out to support the spouses of these selfless, brave men and women who serve us. They put themselves in harm's way so we're not harmed. Thank you. So, as a taxpayer, a property owner, a business owner collects taxes for this borough. I have some concerns about some of the things that are going on with the budget or talk thereof. I could have elaborated more on these, but I wanted to spare you all. So I think you'll get the gist of my questions. And so I won't elaborate too much. My first question is, why would we be making cuts in the police department when it consistently has overtime? Number 2, if training and education is important for public safety, shouldn't we be funding, not cutting this budget? Public safety, our police officers, are a direct extension to public health. If this department is cut, it will burden public health by minimizing the safety healthcare providers need in times of crises and emergencies. We live in an extraordinary community where most of us know our police officers by name. In closing, I urge you to try defending our police, not defunding them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Sir, you wanna-
Guys for listening to me. My name's Todd Newland, and I represent myself. And I also have strong feelings about any cuts that we would be considering to our police department. I'm from a small rural community down in Southern Oregon, and I lived there for 15 years. In 2014, we didn't pass a levy that would fund our police department. So we lost our police department. Within 6 months, the place was out of control. And that is what makes me feel strongly about coming and talking to you guys tonight. Of course, they passed a levy right away and we got our police department back. So then 2 years ago, they legalized marijuana and all the drug cartels came in. So it became a very unsafe place to live. So I started thinking about moving home here to Petersburg. I've always felt safe here and I've always wanted to live here when I got older to feel safe in my retirement. I'm a little young for my retirement, but I decided to move back up here because of the violence and the lawlessness that I was living in. I worked in retail. We couldn't even prosecute people for shoplifting. We couldn't even prosecute people for doing drugs in our parking lot. They legalized small amounts of narcotics in Oregon. Our parking lot of the grocery store I worked at became full of needles, full of people shooting drugs up in their car. No law enforcement at all. So I know I sound a little emotional, but I was unsafe and I felt unsafe. And my family was unsafe. So I talked to my family and we decided to move back to Petersburg. And here we are. And I just wanted to explain to you guys how important it is to have a fully functioning police department and to be able to call the police and have them respond to your calls. Minor crimes become minor problems or major problems when there's nobody there to stop them. So that's mainly what I wanted to get across to everybody, is that it would be a bad move to take any type of law enforcement away from our small community. I feel safe here. I want our people who come and visit to feel safe. I want when people show up to work here that their employers tell them, you break the law in Petersburg, you're going to jail. I want this type of a safety feeling for me and my family. And that's all I'd like to express to you guys, and thank you for listening.
thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
Well, luckily it'll be shorter tonight because I didn't write it out beforehand. If you take any political science or government classes, one of the first things you learn in those classes is about the social contract. And government, according to the social contract, I mean, if you read Rousseau or John Locke or Thomas Hobbes, you get the idea pretty quickly that the first and foremost duty of government is to provide safety for its citizens. So I want you to let you know that I believe that you should fully fund the police department and not consider any deductions from their budget. When the social contract is formed, those things like providing for extra standards of living, those become part of the citizen's job and not the government's. The government can assist, surely, and we can provide for things that we've heard recently, the borough having workforces on, and I'm not going to name those specifically because I'm not down on those workforces, but I am saying the first and foremost job that you have is to provide safety for your citizens. Currently, we need more positions filled than less. We need to make it more attractive
for safety personnel to come to Petersburg. And cutting this funding at this time is doing the opposite of what I believe most of the citizens, at least that I talk to, want you to do. So I think that in reaching for all the things that we'd like to have Petersburg be, remember that those are extras. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Excuse me. Anyone else in the audience that would like to testify during this public hearing on the budget ordinance? Come forward, state your name and who you represent.
Hello, my name is Jim Floyd. I represent myself and I did not prepare a speech, so I'll be quick. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk today, but I know that some of you have been getting information from someone who was in law enforcement down in lower 48. And, I understand when we're looking at scheduling, but also as a business person, I understand how hard it is to staff. Every day we staff anticipating people are going to show up. We have people who are sick. We have people that get injured. We have people that have babies, whatever it is. We're in a time right now that we have a labor shortage. And trying to cut a police officer position to balance a budget is wrong, because what happened during COVID, we had an officer that was out because of an injury. What happens to the training that we talked about sending them for? Here we have 2 state troopers and we have 1 Department of Forestry guy that carries a gun. That is, if they get in a pinch, that is their backup. Down lower 48, within 30-mile radius, you have other agencies that you can call to support them. Mindy Lopez's mom is on the line. And if you're familiar with her, her husband was a law enforcement agent in Alaska, and I apologize, I don't know where, but he was answering a domestic disturbance by himself. And what happened was he knocked on the door, no one responded. When he turned to walk to his car, the person opened the door and shot and killed him in the back. We do not want that to happen. And we think, oh, this is Petersburg. Petersburg is not going to happen. Unfortunately, drugs create crime. We all know what happened recently when we had a bus at the airport. It's a small town. Everybody hears about it. I see the drug problems through my business. I see the theft that goes on a daily basis. We were just down in Seattle recently. The amount of car thefts have doubled this year. The petty crime is smash and grabs. I was trying to find a laptop. They didn't have them on display because of smash and grabs. We are probably going to have our granddaughter come back and live with us because the crime has gotten so bad. I don't want to see that happen here. That's all I have to say about it. So make sure that you don't, whatever you cut, don't cut the police department. Thank you.
For your testimony this evening. Excuse me. Anyone else in the audience who would like to testify during this public hearing? Clerk Thompson, is there anyone on the line that is specifically wants to talk about this issue?
Yes, Luann Madole. I will click here and allow her to talk.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Luann.
Are you there?
Luann, it looks like you might be muted.
Well, I see a phone. Is their call still active? Can you tell?
Yep, she's still there, but she must be struggling trying to figure out how to unmute.
What are the instructions for unmuting on a phone call on Zoom? Is it a certain button? you
I don't
press?
know.
*6.
For me?
There we go.
Oh,
Okay, all right, yay.
Well, we'll start your time. Thank you for calling in tonight. You have 5 minutes and we're ready to listen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for this opportunity to express my thoughts. I represent myself. My name is Luann Madole, and if the last name doesn't ring the bell, no worries, as my story may jog your memories. And if not, please take to heart what I'm about to share. My husband, VPSO Thomas Madole, was murdered in the line of duty while in the village of Manicodic on March 19, 2013. I may get a bit emotional, and if I do, just please understand my heart. I know many officers and their families wonder each day if this could be their last goodbye. This became reality for me. My husband was the only VPSO for several months and was a new hire at the academy when he was shot 5 times and a 6th to the back of his head. He had no backup, and the selfless act of Leroy Dick shooting my husband was a shock to the community. His decision was based upon addiction abuse, was not based upon addiction abuse, but rather anger. Anger towards his mom and stepdad, but yet my husband was the receiver of that anger. He did not deserve what he received that day. I've only lived in Petersburg for 6 years, and it's a great community, but we're not exempt from the physical abuse, addiction abuse, robbery, rape, or cruelty. Protecting this community should always be a priority, and to do that would require an adequate police force. I would hope each of you would feel we are worth being protected, and hopefully none of you will ever have to face what I have faced by losing a loved one. Once a position is lost, it's very hard to get that position back, and the community will continue to grow in number and crime, and our officers will be overworked. Overworked police officers lowers the morale. Eliminating a position will decrease the availability to protect our community. Let's take a moment and consider this quote by Robert Kennedy. Every society is the kind of criminal it deserves. What is equally true is that every community gets the kind of law enforcement it insists on. Tonight, I am making my voice heard and insist on having the protection that I deserve. If my husband were here to speak, he would strongly encourage you to not eliminate, but if anything, increase. I don't want to go through this again, and I sure don't want anyone to ever experience what I have, and I'm talking officer and members of the community. All lives matter when it comes to protection. Please consider the ramifications of your vote if you are leaning towards eliminating an officer position and what it means for our community. Money is not worth losing a life. I wouldn't want that on my hands, and I hope you wouldn't either. I'm sorry it just comes across offensive or very just opinionated, but my heart is very compassionate on this matter, and I stand with my brothers and sisters in blue, as well as with my community that I am proud to be a part of. We all deserve to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson, is there anyone else on the line?
I don't believe there is for this subject.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak under this public hearing for ordinance 2022-07, which is the budget? Mr. Whitethorn?
I don't have to bend it down. Mic is okay, so. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the the budget here on the rural roads fund. Is that the one that does the grading in town and upkeep of our maintenance on our roads here?
I believe it's Public Works, and do we use Secure Rural? Is it the Secure Rural Schools funding that has the road money in it?
Portion of the Secure Rural Schools goes into the roads fund, but also there's money budgeted as a general rule in Public Works. You are correct.
Okay, so that's where the money
Well,
comes from.
I'd just like to invite borough members to take a drive around this community. I took one with my wife yesterday and we drove road in the city limits here. And they're not just bad, they're horrible. I mean, there's chuck holes that you can ruin a rig in if you go over 10 miles an hour. So I'm hoping that you got enough in the budget to kind of keep up with this. Otherwise, my suggestion is that you put this thing out for bid to private enterprise. If you're short on staff or can't come up with, keeping these roads up a little better. I mean, for the amount of taxes we pay here and a little bit of paved streets that we have, I think it's really important to take care of them and do a little better maintenance on them. I also do support the police, and I'll tell you what we see when they don't support them is mass chaos everywhere in the country. So, I mean, it's a pretty no-brainer You know, we're lucky to have a good force here, and I think they do an excellent job. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Was there someone else wanted to speak?
I'm Marita Davis, and I represent the voices that have come to me and spoke to me. I'm not going to name names, but I have something very strongly to say that I keep hearing over and over and over again. But just a quick side note here. You can be stopped for avoiding potholes in the road and be given a warning for driving on the wrong side of the road. I didn't think until later to say that I was avoiding obstacles, but just saying. So, dear assembly members, from the outside looking in and listening to various assembly meetings, it seems as though there is some kind of hidden agenda or vendetta against the police department and Chief Kerr. There has been constant questioning of the department and Chief Kerr at almost every meeting since last year. Are their hiring practices up to par? Are their policies up to date? Is Chief Kerr doing his job correctly? Now, some think we should cut the police officers. When is this going to end? How many calls have you gotten in from the public complaining about the job that the police officers have done? And another thing that I have seen coming, I've spoken these meetings before, see my hand shaking, it's uncomfortable. I have listened and listened to the community giving testimony, then you guys just doing your own thing and not listening to the citizens. And that's not right. I voted some of you in. Some of you I didn't, but I've supported you. I've not sent out a big email or editorial or anything to any of you, or to put down your job. And I know it can be a hard job, but we need public safety. We need to have officers who are able to work their normal 40 hours work week, spend time with their families, and have time off to do the things they need, that they love to do and they need to do for health family. By cutting this additional position, it puts additional stress on the department from not having enough workers, as well as the budget, by paying additional overtime. It shouldn't matter to the assembly how many calls are coming into the department or what type of calls to approve a budget. It also should not matter what the other police departments in Southeast are doing or how they are staffing to approve a budget. Neither of these two scenarios are going to change the need for the vacant position that we have here in Petersburg. Police officers have the most thankless job around. They see themselves as their lowest time, they see themselves, they see everyone in the community at their lowest times in their lives and tend to be hated by many people just for doing their jobs. They put their lives at risk every day just to keep you safe. You, and all of you safe. I would hope that the assembly can put their personal feelings for borough staff aside, stop fueling the division among the community, and vote to approve the budget to keep our community safe by keeping the vacant officer position. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience this evening that would like to participate in this public hearing? Mr. Koenigs.
Good evening. My name is Don Koenig. I represent myself. I've brought my wife with me to attend this meeting. It's a very important meeting.
You move the microphone a little closer to your mouth. Thank you very much.
Do I need to repeat myself? Do you know who I am and why I'm here? I'm here to give testimony on the budget,
Testify. So.
okay? And I brought my wife with me this evening, Gloria Omer. We've been longtime residents in Petersburg. We serve the community in various capacities. I would ask the city manager regarding his budget, the overall budget. During your preparation of the budget, you held a series of work sessions with the council or the assembly and department heads, did you not?
We had one presentation given to us by the finance director and the department.
Oh, so the manager, this budget comes from the finance manager through the borough manager then.
I will let that manager answer. He could probably answer.
That's the question I'm asking him.
Through the mayor? No, the budget's put together by the department heads and then reviewed by the finance director and myself, and then it's delivered to the assembly. At this point, the police is fully funded and all those positions are there.
That's not quite my answer to my question, sir. I asked you if you had worked with the assembly members in conjunction with the department heads collectively in a work session. Just for clarification, I'm wondering if individuals had to go to the departments to talk with them about what they were proposing to the finance director and the budget. So how did you come about developing the budget then? What's your process? I just think I heard what you said. And is that your correct answer? Then that's how you do it?
But through the mayor, I'll try again. So the department heads put their individual department budget together. They then turn those in to the finance director and to myself, and we review those. And then we prepare a presentation for the assembly, which has been done. And we ask the assembly if they would like to go into more detail, we can set those meetings up.
Okay, so you haven't had work sessions at all then with your department heads?
I would think that there wasn't interest by the, speaking for myself, I thought the presentation we got given to us by the finance director after the manager and Jody went over the budget presented to them by the department heads. And the first reading, there was some discussion about changes. So I feel we're going through the process now, you know.
Okay, well, but you're in your second reading. This is the public hearing process. And the next is the final approval by deliberation by the assembly. How do you go about interacting with the department heads to know if you might have questions? And the reason I'm asking this question is because it appears though some are concerned about the police department. And there may be other areas within the budget from various other department heads. It would seem to me that if you're trying to save money in some place, rather than looking and focusing on the police department alone, because it has a position that needs to be funded or open, there is a budget for that, but what about the other departments? So if you're making a cut someplace, would you not compromise and say we take 5% across the board or however you might go about that? But that doesn't seem to be what's happened. Okay, so that leads me to the main reason why my wife and I came here, because we've been following along on the assembly and reading the paper about concerns about the police department, and individuals have talked and commented about not funding the police department. So maybe some way they could save and maybe even pave a sidewalk or something, do more sidewalks or something. So in other words, it seems like when I look at the budget, I see the budget has been increasing, not just year, it says year, but year after year after year. You've got negotiate contracts for employees. 50%, over 50% of the, almost probably 60% of all of the budget itself is in wages and benefits. And that has never not ever had not an increase in the past 30 some years that I've been in this town. You just keep spending more and more and more. And maybe it's rightfully so, but there are times, if there were tough times ahead, maybe somebody could take a freeze in wages. So I'm being a little philosophical here.
Mr.
But I
Koenig-
support,
Mr. Koenig, we do have a time limit on our testimony. and I-
Okay.
you've
okay,
reached-
fine.
you've reached
What
your
is the
5
time
minutes.
limit, sir?
5 minutes and you've reached it. So if you could wrap up your,
Okay, I will. I too, as others I've listened here just this evening briefly about the police department. I support the police department. And for all the reasons that the people have already given testimony. And I know my wife does too. And so I ask your consideration to follow the manager's recommendation and the finance director's management, what they've proposed in the budget and leave it as it is. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much for your testimony this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify under this public hearing? Anyone else call in, Clerk Thompson?
No.
Okay, if there's no one else that's interested in testifying or participating in this public hearing this evening in the audience, this public hearing is now closed. Brings us to item 6 on the agenda. Bid awards, there are none on the agenda this evening. Item 7, that item is persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to issues on tonight's agenda, please raise your hand, come forward and testify. You have a 5-minute limit. Is there anyone calling in, Clerk Thompson, for this
No.
issue? Okay, one more time. Is there anyone in the audience issued to testify or comment on tonight's agenda? Okay, that brings us to item 8. Persons to be heard on items unrelated to tonight's agenda. Please step forward, state your name and who you represent. You have a 5-minute limit.
Mayor Jensen, I just noticed a hand that went up and it was probably about, I'm not sure, I bet it was about related to the agenda. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jim Floyd. So I'm here as the president of the Chamber of Commerce and as a business leader in this community. So recently in the chamber, we had a discussion that it was felt that the boats felt like the town didn't want tourism or visitors. And so we started asking the questions. Well, recently we were very encouraged when the beginning of the season, we had 109 ships scheduled, 109 stops scheduled. Recently, we lost one of the boats and we're down to 90. Well, we discovered that National Geographic was not allowing people off the boats. And so we started asking the questions, why? I have discussed this with several of you and talked to a few other people, and I don't really have a clear answer. And so just to show you just a little bit about how it affects us. So losing just the Ryan on those stops potentially is costing the harbor $15,000. We talked about the harbor budget recently, so obviously that's fresh on everybody's mind. National Geographic is 4 boats, ships, however you want to call it, represents 39 stops out of those 90. That's not quite half, but it's pretty close. So, we already talked about how one boat can affect the harbor, but what about the businesses in town that can't benefit from the sales have already purchased things because they expected 109 ships. So the inventory is sitting there, not to mention the taxes the borough is going to receive. So we started doing some more digging and found out that they're following CDC guidelines. So currently they're using the dashboard from the hospital. The dashboard has never been a green status. So my question is, how do we get a yellow status? Is that because the percentage of cases to our population, or is it a percentage because we're inadequately staffed at the hospital? And I don't have an answer to that question yet. What I do know is that we have the 39 ships are not allowing people off because of the status of yellow at the hospital. I think it's a fair question, and I was advised to wait to the next meeting for the hospital. We can't wait that long. It's a short season. It affects a lot of businesses in this town. So if it's a case that we don't have adequate staffing, I'm sorry to tell you, this is the new norm. There are over 30 jobs posted in the paper this week. And there's a lot of business like myself that gave up posting because we're just not getting anybody. If it's the cases in town, the dashboard currently hasn't been updated since the 9th. So why aren't we getting it updated daily if it's going to affect visitors to our town? It is a big problem it's about money. Let's be honest, it's about money. Here we are talking about the budget. We're talking about raising utilities. We're talking about raising harbor fees. It affects every facet of our little town. And I've also, being new to town, I heard that people aren't really wild about the drive down, but I have to remind people, the first $3 million of that drive down came from tourism, from the money from the tourism. So if we didn't have the tourist ships, and we don't want to be Juneau, I lived in Juneau and I don't want to have 1,000 people, 5,000. I get that, I'm totally on board. But the little people, the little 100 people ships is important to our economy and something needs to be done. And he mentioned about the drafting a letter, and that's why I'm here today. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony this evening. Clerk Thompson, will you circle back to the person that called in?
Yes, thank you. It is Chris Zimmer.
Hi, this is Chris Zimmer. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sorry about missing that first listing there for me. Thank you for circling back to me. My name is Chris Zimmer. I live in Juneau, and I am the Alaska director for an organization called Rivers Without Borders, and we've been working on issues in the transboundary rivers for about 20 years. I wanted to speak today to the Tulsqua Chief resolution that you'll be considering in a bit. I believe it's under agenda item 15. And I want to thank the Assembly and the Mayor there for your consistent support for addressing the threats of the Tulsqua Chief and protecting the Taku over the last couple decades. Your support's been very consistent, it's been very strong, and it sends a message that this is just more than just a Juneau issue. These series of resolutions that we've gathered over the last many years from all kinds of entities have gotten us to where we are today, where we are looking at the potential of closing down and cleaning up the Tulsqua Chief finally. But we're not there yet. We still need to keep the pressure up. Why I come to you today on this resolution and why now is that several years ago, the mining company that owns Tulsqua Chief went bankrupt. They went into a receivership process. That receivership process is supposed to end this August. That receivership process has really prevented the state or the province of BC from taking charge of the mine and cleaning it up. So before BC can really take over the mine and clean it up, we've got to end this receivership process. It's supposed to end this August, but there's certainly potential that any creditor could bring a request to extend the receivership, meaning we wouldn't make any progress on cleanup. So what we need right now is to convince the province of British Columbia to oppose any extension to the receivership, to make sure that the receivership ends as planned this August, and that as soon as those restrictions from the receivership are lifted, that the province of British Columbia moves aggressively to clean up the mine. And the last thing I want to say is the resolutions we've collected over the last many years are really not just feel-good resolutions, as I've heard some people call them. This has stiffened up the spine of the EPA and the State Department, has gotten Senator Sullivan and Murkowski involved, has changed the state of Alaska's position on this to one of cleanup and closure. So this consistent support over 20 years has gotten us to where we are today, and that we may be a couple months away from largely ending the threat of the Tulsqua Chief. So I'd urge you to pass the resolution. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony this evening, Mr. Zimmer. Anyone else on the phone?
Yes, if we go back to unrelated, we
Okay.
have Will Ware on the phone. Okay, here he comes. *6, Will.
Sorry about that. I was halfway through my passionate speech before I realized you couldn't hear me. This is Will Ware.
We didn't start the clock yet, so you can start over.
I think I forgot half of what I was going to say, but my name is Will Ware, and I'm representing the Cedar Box and Ha'ani Adventures LLC, and I truthfully believe that I'm representing a number of the businesses that are in Petersburg that feel as though their voice isn't necessarily being heard in regards to what Jim Floyd had brought up just a bit ago with the Lindblad expeditions and the 4 vessels that aren't allowing summer visitors to come ashore. Really, it's a convoluted situation. However, for the small businesses in Petersburg, I just feel the need to remind our community and our borough assembly that these small businesses have come through a very horrific pandemic. And for those of us that have made it through that pandemic, we did so with some pride, and we did so with some just great expectancy for this coming season. And I got to tell you that there are some businesses, not just in Petersburg, but all over the place, that are going to be closing their doors post-pandemic because of the effects of the pandemic that they're just not able to simply recover from. That is a terrible thought, but that's just the reality that we're facing. And so many folks just aren't able to recover. I'm really kind of perplexed that we have a system in place right now in our community where we do not go to a status green, that we are going to be stuck in a perpetual status of yellow. And it's a really confusing to try to understand why or how that is, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that we have fewer ships that are able to participate in our community and support our businesses. I want to remind our assembly that it's our small businesses that support our community and is the backbone of Petersburg. We pay our sales taxes, we pay property taxes, we pay our labor force, we pay people livable wages so they can continue to live here with their families. We support Mayfest. We support 3rd and 4th of July, as well as our Christmas parade and tree lighting events. I would venture to say, and I say this often, that I can't think of a business in town that when we have our young people coming in looking for support for various events, school events that they're doing, I can't imagine that there's businesses out there that would say no, even when maybe they can't afford to help and support, they still do. We support nonprofits with donations of product and finances. And yet we're finding ourselves hamstringed right now and our hands tied during the summer, where we make the majority of our revenue for the whole year. And it's confusing. And I know I've heard some on the assembly say, well, it's the hospital that does that, the level. They're the ones who decide on the level and the status of Petersburg. I got to tell you, that isn't helping us when we don't ever get to a point of green. And so I appreciate Assemblymember Mucci saying that we want to write a letter, maybe between the chamber and the assembly, stating that Petersburg is open and that we are welcoming to our summer visitors. However, will that help if some of the cruise lines like Lindblad Expeditions will continue to go to the hospital board that is rarely updated any longer and see that we're still at a status yellow? I'm concerned that we can write numbers of letters, but unless we work together to come up to a solution that benefits our community, nothing will change. And so we're asking for a letter. Sure, that sounds great, but let's not just stop there and write their hands and say, we did our job. We got to find a solution. There's a lot of confusion surrounding this, and I know that Jim and some others have taken the time to better understand where we are and why we are in a status of yellow and not going to green. But I can tell you, if the average citizen and our summer visitors and these business owners, they're not going to take the time to sit down and try to understand the politics or the rationale as to why we are where we are. They're just simply not going to let their visitors off. And so that being the case, I just want to give my support to the economy of Petersburg. We've gotten through this. We were looking for brighter days ahead. We were looking for some vibrancy to the season. We planned accordingly. We budgeted accordingly. And now we're finding more walls that are being brought up at the tail end of this pandemic. And I got to tell you, it's insult to injury. So if there's any way that our assembly can do more than just simply write a letter, which I applaud and I appreciate, but we got to do more. We got to be aggressive to bring our community back alive. We got to have the diversity of our economy that is going to help us make it through this post-pandemic economy. So thank you very much for hearing me out.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony this evening, Mr. Ware. And I know the manager's aware of this, and I had a conversation with you the other day, so hopefully we could get to some resolution before too long. Anyone else like to speak on items unrelated to today's agenda? Okay, no one else on the phone? Okay, that item is closed. On boards, commission and committee reports, we have Parks and Recreation Advisory Board report on the trails work session. Chairman Hayes will provide a report to the Assembly regarding an October 2021 public work session regarding local trail development. So I believe you have a microphone back there, don't you?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for letting me as board chair to sit back here. So in October 2021, we did have a public work session, which was well attended and well responded to. And I'm specifically going to give an update regarding trail development and focusing on the Severson's Connector Trail. So this is an update both to the public and to the Assembly about this. We're not currently seeking any direct action from the Assembly at this time. We are just updating right now. So the Severson's Connector Trail connecting the Severson neighborhood to the Fire Hall / Hagen Drive sidewalk proposal was first addressed many years ago. It involves land from the borough, the DOT, and Ron Bushman. In your packet, you will find supporting letters from Casey Knight, Dave Berg, PIA, and public response to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee's outreach regarding the trail. And Ron Bushman has also verbally supported an easement regarding this trail on his property. Currently, Steve Giesbrecht is in in talks with the Department of Transportation regarding the land and trail proposal. Besides waiting for permissions for a trail from the Department of Transportation, we are ready to move forward. Myself, Chair, we have Steve Giesbrecht, Chad Wright from PIA, and Stephanie Painter, all here to able to answer questions regarding this. And I do have a letter that was unanimously approved by the Parks and Rec Advisory Board that I'm going to read here. And it says, to whom it may concern, in October of 2021, the Petersburg Parks and Recreation Board held a public work session to take input on local trail development. The work session was well attended on a weeknight with 12 participants from across the community, as well as the director of PIA. Participants included families, retirees, business owners, cyclists, hikers, dog walkers, and volunteers interested in helping build more trails. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board also received 2 emails from the public prior to the event. Discussion at the work session included new input from attendees. Participants also discussed trail-related responses from Parks and Rec Department's February 2021 Community Interest Survey. While the Trails work session attendees and survey respondents contributed to many helpful suggestions and ideas, a few rose to the surface repeatedly. When asked about existing trails and trails development, the #1 most common comment from the public was to please add more trails and trail connectivity in our community. People noted that many people exercise outdoors in Petersburg, and our trails allow people to stay healthy, hike, run, walk in the beauty of nature. The #2 most common public comment was to move forward with the crosstown trail connection, specifically the proposed trail link between Severson subdivision and the fire station / post office of Hagen Drive. The request appeared in 16 different responses in our February 2021 community survey, more than any other new trail related suggestion by a factor of 8. It was also the proposal most discussed by attendees of the October 2021 Trails work session. Emails to the Parks and Rec Board from business owner Dave Berg and Severson subdivision homeowner Casey Knight were also in support of the Severson Connector Trail. Mr. Berg, noted such a trail would add activities for travelers, including those from the harbor or drive down dock, and suggested there may be visitor businesses that would partner with the community to construct the trail. Mr. Knight summarized via email and in person at the work session, the roadblocks that have been encountered, namely from the Alaskan Department of Transportation. Mr. Knight has collected resident signatures in support of the project and suggested the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and Petersburg Assembly continue to advocate for the Severson Trail. While roadblocks to the Severson's Trail proposal have been encountered in the past, it's clear that public support for the proposal is still broad and enthusiastic enough to warrant further work towards solutions amenable to all stakeholders. The Petersburg Parks and Recreation Board therefore asks the Petersburg Assembly and Borough staff to increase or reestablish efforts to support the development of the Severson's Trail through resolution, direction to staff, or in any way the Assembly finds prudent and effective in the future. Thank you. Again, this is Stephanie from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Okay, thank you for your report on the advisory board meeting and the summary of the survey. Any questions this evening by Assembly members? Okay, thanks again for your report. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. There are no items on the consent agenda this evening. And item 11 on the agenda tonight is report of other officers. We have a report from Robert Venables, Southeast Conference Executive Director. He will update the Assembly on current issues and activities happening at the organization. So Robert, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Assembly members. My name is Robert Venables. I'm the Executive Director for Southeast Conference. And I had the choice of going through a 39-slide presentation or having a conversation with you. I hope I'm choosing wisely to have a conversation with you. But I did want to put the information into the public record so you could see a lot of what was happening at your conference and start off with a word of thanks for a number of reasons. Number one, Petersburg being the community that has supported Southeast Conference the longest. Hosted the organizational meeting in 1958 right here in town that formed Southeast Conference and set the priorities for transportation, specifically top priority for the Marine Highway System, which continues to be our passion. And I'll speak to that in a moment. But Mr. Ware referred to the last couple of years as a horrific pandemic, and that it was. And so I just kind of, my slide presentation and remarks are kind of geared for, that time frame moving forward, because when our economies came to a standstill, everybody went into triage mode on many fronts. And so, thank you as one of the many communities in the region that did everything possible to keep the communities safe and supported the local economies. We were instrumental in helping Department of Commerce and the federal government bring resources in for the business community. I know local support was there as well. And by and large, our region saw the least amount of permanent closures in the state and the highest number of program support for individual businesses. And in part, one of the things that helps makes us be effective is the planning that we do. And I think that's been something that has been noted and you've participated in. Many of you have been at our personal events and participated in the teleconferences and Zoom conferences that we have. But where we get, our most valuable information is from the business community itself. And, the little postcard they posted out and on slide 7 in the slide deck is a QR code that directs business leaders to the current survey, which will be out for another couple of weeks. So one of the objectives that we'll be, talking with the business community about tomorrow as well, I want to bring to your attention is that opportunity to really help inform. If we get enough businesses in Petersburg that respond to that, then we will do a separate standalone analysis to present to you all, because that information has been critical for local communities, for the state of Alaska, and for the federal government. We saw Senator Murkowski using it on the Senate floor last year when fighting for the waiver for the PVSA, which Southeast Conference spent a lot of time trying to stand up what little tourism we could get going. And we saw a little bump on the independent tourism. We used a number of funds from a grant that we received for COVID-safe tourism travel, and that was a priority last year. And we're starting to see, the industry getting back on its feet. So the information that we share, we kind of ground truth at our annual meeting. We do come out with our next publication for by the numbers. And so we'll look forward to rolling that out in Ketchikan. There's also the other card that I left out there was the just an early invitation to put that on your calendars to hopefully attend with us. And we'll have access to a lot more policymakers or potential policymakers with ranked choice voting. Gotta get it straight. Too many choices of what to call it. There's going to be at least 4 candidates for the major seats that we will be inviting to speak to us so that not only do we hear from them, but we want to be able to make sure they understand the region and what our needs are. And so we'd invite you to join with us with that on that. And, I think one of the things that, we really, as a small staff, have to focus on so many things. And so the top things, now we've kind of looked at the tourism, continual support for all of our different sectors. You see on the earlier slide, the different sectors that we're supporting. Some of the smaller things that we do on the energy front and promoting displacement of diesel for home heating, for even transportation with electric vehicles. Our islanded communities are just ideal for that, so especially with the low cost energy that many of the communities have access to. We've seen the opportunity to support CSWA, the Solid Waste Authority, with a chipper that its official home is going to be here in Petersburg. We appreciate Public Works helping to coordinate that. It's going to be traveling from community to community to help address some of those issues. And there's some opportunities, I think, this coming year to really take a deeper dive into the original purpose of CSWA and maybe expanding that viewpoint. And maybe the time is right to take more look at a regional solid waste solution that really has not yet materialized. We've supported a lot of things, especially along the disasters that we've seen in fisheries and the natural disasters we've seen in so many places, including Haines. But moving forward, we have a lot of opportunities for mariculture in the region. And Southeast Conference, out of 529 applications nationwide, we're one of 60 finalists that will be examined to be one of 30 awardees, we hope, for really standing up what is a very diverse but small number of businesses that is engaged in shellfish or sea vegetables and creating a scale that could be called an industry. So we're excited about that. We're excited to see what might happen on Prince of Wales Island as the Forest Service is taking a look at ways to kind of help reinvigorate that depressed economy with the situation with timber. We will never lose our passion for transportation. And we saw the senators' fingerprints, our whole delegation supporting the new programs that will make a transformational opportunity for the ferry system. How the state responds to that, the jury is out, but I was very pleased to be able to see Southeast Conference partner with the state on some near-term data analysis on electric ferries and low emission vessels. So we're going to move forward with that and see where those programs go. But the new kind of essential marine service that's available for the marine highway system in the next 5 years will allow them the opportunity to build new boats, which is critical. And that is what we're going to be trying to engage with, cajole, and persuade a different type of addressing. If we're looking backwards in the rearview mirror to try to use these funds to recreate what was, we'll succeed at doing that for 4 years and spend all the money. And then, as my remarks to the new advisory board were titled, we'd be singing the song, "If Only I Had $1 billion," because they do. And we're gonna work with them and support them and hope that gets spent wisely so that we can have reliable, dependable service in the region. So those are just highlights of what we've been working on. And I really appreciate the opportunity to just engage you in the community as I'm here tomorrow, the administration as well. So if there's any questions, I'd be certainly happy to answer those now or at any time. You have my contact information. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming and giving us your report or update, Robert. And are there any questions of Mr. Venables? Member Kinser.
Robert, could you tell everybody that's listening on the radio when the meeting is tomorrow?
So we have a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce here in the Assembly Chambers. I believe it's 9:30. So we're encouraging the business folks to be here to engage in the issues of the day that they're facing. And so one of the things that I did not mention with that QR code in the business climate survey, which is critical to our annual survey that we do, is that the state is in the process right now of developing their own comprehensive economic development strategy, which is the 5-year plan, because not all the state has Southeast conferences. There's 9 ARDers across the state. And so for the large gaps that don't have opportunity to be covered by regional SEDS like we do here, the state develops one that covers the entire state. The state is looking for the same information as they need to hear from Southeast Alaska. We're funneling this business climate survey information to the state. So this is the opportunity to really help weigh in and make that product as meaningful as possible. So thank you for the question.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so thanks again for coming to town.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Lynn. Member Lynn has a SEPA board report.
I do. As soon as we get this, or Kurt gets the screen up here, I'm ready to run. We have Carl and I attended a meeting last Wednesday of SEPA, the quarterly meeting. And I want to talk about just a number of topics. I'll try to make this fairly quick. The first one I have up there relates to vibration engineering. And this is brand new to me, so I've just have to lay it out for folks. What we talked about is we're beginning to get, in one of our reservoirs on the dam itself, we're getting a little bit of vibration. And the question is how do you measure it and what you do and what does it mean? And so we've taken a look at, some of the engineers have taken a look, the technology is so advanced that you place sensors, and the sensors are only about 2 inches by 2 inches, very small. You place those all across the dam or down the dam and so forth. And you can tell from the engineering, from the computer, where those vibrations or which one of those is sensing from. And so what the purpose here is that, and we approved a little bit of study on it, what the purpose is to approve a stability point. And then to look at, we've put water up on the flash gates of the reservoir, and we're up about 5 feet, and the engineers are a little concerned about going any higher until we learn a little bit more, because I won't get into all the details, but essentially the head on the turbine stalks and so forth that we're looking at. And so I just put it up there because of interest to me. I did not realize the science behind vibration. I just throw it there. If you got questions, you probably exceed my knowledge real quick, but I'll go there. Let me jump into the other part, is that we had kind of the meeting essentially was to set up what we're going to look at in the future. And we've had long conversations about rate determinations and what we need to do. From all 3 communities, Wrangell, Ketchikan, and we have been arguing that we do not want one major rate increase. We want to have very minimal rate increases over time. And I've been pushing for the CEO to lay out essentially what we really wanted to do. And he did at this meeting. He laid out essentially a 1/4 cent increase for the next 4 years is what he's proposing. There was no vote taken. This is going to be on the next agenda. But in addition to that, he asked for 2 additional things, which I want to talk about. One of them is that we're looking at what our needs are for, and Robert talked a little bit about this, what our needs are from the 3 communities, let's say 10 years out. And we've had all kinds of discussions on everything from electric boats to providing power to the cruise ships that are out there, to changes in technology and so forth between the community. So one of the things that he's asked us for is to see what we really, to look at a study, to look at what potential needs are for electricity over, let's say, 10 years out, or what we're going to need to. What we didn't want to do or propose to build another reservoir or another asset if we don't need it, or if we can provide it another way. But you really can't get there till you know have some estimate of what your needs are. And so what he's going to bring forward is a proposal to take that look at the next meeting. The other item we've done, he's asked us to do is that we have never had a process for rate determinations. And he asked the staff to, he asked the board, we really do need to take a look at this. We need a process because we aren't under the same processes and aren't regulated the same way as other companies. And so are in public companies. And so he's asked us, would we be willing to fund not a study, but to ask for an engineering firm to make a recommendation on how that should be determined. Those items I'm talking about are all on the September agenda, but I just talked about them here just for interest in what's going on. And with that, Carl, would you add anything else or change anything I've said?
No, I think you covered it really well.
Okay, thank you. And I'm open for questions if anybody has some.
Questions from Member Lynn? So I've got one question, Bob. So they're concerned about the vibration they're detecting in the dam, and we're up 5 feet on the flash gates.
Yes.
So we're not realizing the 12-foot of buildup of the dam yet.
Yeah,
So-
we went up to 8 foot and they're detecting some change in that, in that sound on that, but we don't know what it is.
So they don't know whether it's turbines or.
Exactly. And we don't know whether it's, air is used when you go into those for entrainment, it acts as a lubricant. We don't know, it may be just so simple that, we just don't know. And I think I agree with the engineers saying, let's be a little cautious here. We've put it up to 8 foot, and now that seems to be the limit, and we'll drop it, I've dropped it down. By what I talked about earlier about switching power back and forth between Tyee and that one by a time, and so we can operate it the most efficient way. We've been able not to spill, so we're utilizing the water perfectly and supporting all 3 communities. So I very much like what the engineer came up with, Robert Seidman did on this. I think it's paying its dividends.
All right, that answers my question.
Thanks.
So now the next report is from Assemblymember Tremblay, and it's a report on Petersburg housing.
Thank you. So to backtrack, I believe it was late 2019 or early 2020, the before times. We set 5 priorities for the Borough Assembly and the manager to deal with, and one of them was housing. I'm very interested in it as a topic, so I've been having meetings with members from the borough government, some members from PIA, nonprofits, and individual community members from around just around the community on the topic of housing, and just to see what chess pieces we can keep moving forward in this conversation. So we received an update from both the manager and administrator, Chad Bright, that unfortunately it's unlikely that there's funds from Clinton and Haida for a larger development, but hopefully at least a duplex or a triplex could be coming in the coming year. We also heard an update on the Vackerstead apartments. The majority have been rented, and some pretty exciting news. HIP has new flexible funding from the state, and that funding was able to be used to help facilitate the move-in process for some people that were in either couch surfing and or outside situations. And so I'm very grateful for that update from them. It's the apartments coming at the same time as that flexible funding was a pretty amazing combination for some people. And yeah, so it's nice to hear good news on topics like that. And then we moved on to chat quite a bit with Director Cabrera. She's looking to take advantage of some utility work that already needs to happen, and hopefully getting lots in Service Area 1 available for development and sale. And so we kind of had a more loose conversation. Chief Kerr was able to join us, and he made the point that not only is it important for the borough to have housing available for hiring situations, but the police department themselves deal with situations that would be situations that wouldn't exist at all, or would be much less stressful if more affordable housing were available in the community. People would leave unsafe and or violent situations if they could afford to. And right now, that's often not the case. And given the fact that people can work full-time jobs and not be able to accumulate savings that would require the move-out process as well, the margins are tight. And so any help that people can receive makes a big difference. So that was kind of the broad swath of the conversation. I'm always here for questions. We've been meeting every 2 months at this point, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. somehow still work for all of us. And we do keep it to a tight 1 hour. So yeah, if anyone has questions, I'm here for them. But otherwise, I'll just come back to you with more in July.
Are there any questions of Member Tremblay? Okay, thanks for your update. Okay, that brings us to a very short mayor's report. We're seeking letters of interest. Petersburg Borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community by filling one of the vacant seats on the following borough boards and commissions until the October 2022 municipal election. Planning Commission, there are 2 vacant seats, and Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, there is 1 vacant seat. Mayfest is upon us, starting Thursday, and there will be some elected officials coming to town. The governor has expressed interest, but whether he's going to finalize his visit or not, so is to be seen yet. Senators Murkowski and Sullivan will be in town for brief visits. One of them on Friday, leaving Saturday morning, and the other one Saturday morning coming into town, leaving that afternoon. They plan to make themselves available to the public at public functions in the community. They'll be wandering around, and I'm sure most people will recognize them. So that's my report. Manager Giesbrecht.
Thank you, sir. Recent fair weather gave our Public Works crew an opportunity to paint curbs and crosswalks in the downtown area. Sand pickup continues and grading as weather permits. The tire shear unit belonging to the Southeast Solid Waste Authority, or CSWA, is in Petersburg, and we are using it to cut up accumulated tires at the landfill prior to containerizing the tire pieces and shipping them south. Landfill operators down south will not accept tires in the round since they fill with gases and they migrate up through the landfill. Once we are done with the tire shear on this rotation, we will forward along to another CSWA member community, and we'll just continue doing that, each taking their turn with it to keep the tires under control. Warning, if you haven't figured it out already, garbage bearers are out and about, causing some mischief. Public Works has issued a PSA and placed ads in the paper to remind folks to keep garbage secured or face possible citations and fines, or your neighbors getting mad at you when your garbage is spread all over their yard. We're continuing to distribute KN95 masks and at-home COVID antigen test kits. Test kits are available at the police department, library, municipal building, fire department, and the public health nurse's office. Recently, in doing some work on the bay doors at Fire Station 1, we found that the glass in those doors is non-compliant. It's supposed to be tempered glass, and it's not. So we're in the process of trying to figure out how to replace it with tempered glass, and Sandy's working through getting some bids and what we'll have to do to make that happen. We have had some COVID outbreaks among the volunteers. Fortunately, it's only been kind of 1 or 2 at a time. Most have had very minor or no symptoms at all. Just a special note to the whole community. When you see a volunteer, please tell them thank you. We really do count on them. We are open for visitors at the manor. Please don't visit our residents if you are not feeling well. Please call Sheilyn with any questions at 907-772-2445. The 2 empty apartments on the assisted living 2nd floor will be filled with independent residents as we continue to go through the staffing shortages here in town. We're working down the wait list. So far, 1 apartment is spoken for. Our recertification with the state of Alaska is complete for 2 more years as a Medicaid provider at the manor, and various other inspections are continuing on, and Sheilyn continues to do very, very well in keeping us in compliance. The water staff is working with Boreal Controls out of Juneau for the replacement of 3 control panel battery backups in the treatment plant. And we're looking for proposals for dam safety inspections at both Cabin Creek and City Creek reservoirs. Wastewater staff successfully set up the public restroom trailers for the summer season. The waste tanks are plumbed directly into the sewer system, and the trailers are connected directly to municipal water for the season. We have them cleaned frequently, and we're just going through occasional maintenance issues that we're working through. Wastewater staff has started hauling wastewater from cruise ships using the repurposed street wash truck and the department's sludge tank. Thanks to NC Machinery, who mobilized to Petersburg on April 18th for the Caterpillar 399 overhaul. The project was completed on May 9th after some trouble was had with the remanufactured turbocharger cartridges. NC Machinery was great to work with and resolved the turbo issues as quickly as they could. The machine is working well and is ready for our June diesel run. Testing and maintenance of generator breakers at the downtown power plant and at Scow Bay is scheduled for the week of May 16th. The contractor will also check out vacuum switch that is slated for install at the Blind Slough Hydro substation and that has been in storage. A reminder that the fuel adjustment rate will be in effect for the SEPA maintenance run in June. All customers are highly encouraged to conserve power during the June billing period so that adjustment rate will be minimized as much as possible. Conservation tips include turning off lights when not in a room, unplugging electric space heaters, turning off ceiling fans, unplugging water pipe heat tape, and turning down hot water heaters. It all adds up and will help to lessen the impact on everyone's power bills. Parks and Rec will be closing on May 20th at 1 p.m. to host the Little Norway Festival events downtown. This marks also the beginning of our annual cleaning and maintenance closure. They will be closed until Monday, June 13th at 6 a.m. Parks and Rec would like to congratulate our 3 graduating seniors, Bergen Klunt-Painter, Britton Colson, and Sean Spiegelmeyer. Thank you for being part of our lifeguard team. Petersburg Triathlon Club is open for membership registration. Please contact Parks and Rec for more information. I signed up all of the assembly members, so they're waiting for you. Anyway, park restrooms at Sandy Beach and Outlook Park are now open. And as we've heard about, the summer tour season has begun. Updated schedule can be found on the Borough website and posted weekly at the tops of each ramp. Hello, you still over there? Sorry, are we back up over 100? Okay, thank you. I knew it had changed back and forth, so thank you. So warning to everybody, drive down in the loading zones will be very busy. Keep an eye out for folks. The Harbor transient arrival list is full as well. Lots of people heading our way this summer, and launch permits are out for purchase at the Harbor office. Harbor's busy, stalls are full in all 3 harbors, and we have a waiting list for all size classes. I'm continuing to work with ADOT and ADNR on the PAPKES facilities. I will need assembly approval on several items at a future meeting so I can complete the application process for acquiring the ADNR Tidelands and Uplands property. I think I put in earlier to you that we do it the first meeting in June. That may not happen. It may slide. We've got to do some work on the plans. Borough staff and some volunteer help participated in several initial interviews for the Manor Director and the Fire EMS SAR Emergency Manager Director positions. We will do some second interviews on one of those positions. Unfortunately, on the Fire EMS, we are not in a position to do final interviews, so we're going to go back to recruiting some more. We'll see if we can find. And it's in my report. It got added late. It's not actually written, but on the Nat Geo thing, I just want to make some things clear that was part of the report. There's no current borough policy that is preventing Nat Geo from allowing their passengers to circulate through town. This is a corporate policy, actually above even Nat Geo. I believe it's their parent company that's making decisions. It's tied to a yellow status, as you've heard people say. That status is coming from CDC calculations, and the hospital's not even sure where it's coming from. So I brought it up with Phil and his team this morning. They're looking into it to try to figure out, how do they work through this. It was a surprise to them. The yellow status that's on the dashboard is actually for internal hospital. It's not really out there for the public. So we're not really sure where the information is coming from, whether it's from public health, whether it's from the hospital, and whether it's coming from the state of Alaska. And that's going through this. So we're not sure the level of impact we can have quite yet. Phil's looking into it. And did reach out to Dave Berg Friday of last week in anticipation that we would like to talk to Nat Geo and at least explain our side of the story, asking for contact information. Sounds like it's above Nat Geo's, so we don't have that information as of yet, which is names, phone numbers, addresses, who we would actually talk to. So anyway, I wanted to fill everybody in. That's as of this morning, unless the hospital has updated that.
Thanks for your report. Member Tremblay?
Thank you. Just for clarity on where you heard about the code yellow rule, was that, yeah, where did you hear that from?
Absolutely, just through people talking in town.
Okay.
One of the captains said that to, I believe, Sandy, was that? Yeah, I'm trying to remember who we got that from. So that's part of the challenge, is trying to track that down. I don't know, Sandy, if you can add more.
Yes, Mike, please, yes.
So Steve explained what I found out this morning about the CDC. That's where the cruise ships are getting their information. It has nothing to do with the local dashboard. The local dashboard is, again, like Steve mentioned, strictly for Petersburg Medical Center. It has nothing to do with the community itself. We disbanded that when the EOC stepped down. So maybe people are misinterpreting that. So I spoke with Phil, or texted with Phil, excuse me, and he just sent me a message saying the dashboard is temporarily taken offline while we adjust it. Nat Geo can contact public health or the state if they need to get information. We will get an updated dashboard up by this week. So hopefully that will correct any miscommunication. And we did have a cadre, which Dave and Chelsea sat on. We never instituted any restrictions related to cruise ship traffic at all. And then the information about them not allowing people to mingle in the community was strictly, it came from the cruise industry, not from us. So just to clarify that.
Very nice to have that clarification. Any other questions of the manager and his report? Member Kensinger?
Just an observation, the Nat Geo boats turn in Sika and everybody's running around in town, and they have had higher reported COVID cases than we have here. So somewhere there's a miscommunication that we need to get to the upper ups.
It would be helpful, and I'm hoping Dave can find the contact information so we can at least, I mean, because it's one of those things that might be best handled by a phone call rather than a letter.
Right.
So you can talk through it. We just need to know who to talk to.
Could you, since we need to work on this as rapidly as possible, could you keep us apprised? And
Yeah.
if there's anything we can do
I can do
to
that.
facilitate it?
I reached out to Dave last week, and I'm sure he's working on it.
Bermucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things for the city manager. Are both of the public restrooms operational and functioning?
There's actually 4 there,
Yep.
2 different units. And we've had one problem with a circuit breaker popping off, so it's only been open and operational on occasion. And then we also had a leak in one of them that was fixed. And so I think 3 of the 4 are open as we speak.
The other question I had is back in February when we were talking about the incentive programs for the police and dispatchers. One of the things we talked about was talking about the healthcare plan review with both officers and dispatch personnel. Has that been done yet, or is that in the process?
Clerk Thompson, do you have an answer?
Okay, thanks.
Yes, this next month, we will be having a presentation on our healthcare plan for all borough employees.
Okay,
Is that what you asked?
well, Mr. Mayor, I asked if it, specifically, we talked about sitting down with dispatch and police officers to go over the healthcare plan to see if there was additional things we could do to retain and attract police officers. And that's, I know you're going to do borough-wide, but at one time we talked about it in February, just focusing on dispatch and police officers.
And doing that, we had to wait to make sure the healthcare plan that we were going to use was actually chosen, which just happened, last week.
Yes.
So once that happened, we then set up a meeting. The actual people from our broker will actually come to town and work with our staff and actually do those meetings, not just with the police staff, but we thought it would be worthwhile to do it for everybody.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the manager? Don't see any. Thanks, Steve.
Sir.
So what's the will of the assembly? You want to just start with unfinished business and maybe just do the first 2 items and take a break before we get to the budget?
Do it.
Sure.
Okay, so item 14, unfinished business. I entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-05. This is an ordinance updating chapter 14.04.0.420 of the municipal code entitled Water Rates, Schedules and Fees. This is the 3rd and final reading. I entertain a motion to adopt this.
Moved.
Second.
Motion's been made in a second. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Yeah, I'll just briefly chime in since it is the third and final reading, but in case someone is just tuning in for the first time, Assembly Director Hagerman and others put lots of work in. It has been well vetted and it is a time to make this increase, even though none of us like increases of any kind. That is what keeps our infrastructure at high quality and in place. So I'll definitely be voting yes.
Any other discussion on this third and final reading of this ordinance? Clerk, call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2205 passes unanimously in its third and final reading. That brings us to ordinance 2206. This is an ordinance updating various sections of chapter 14.08 of the municipal code entitled sewer utility. This is the third and final reading. If this ordinance is adopted, it will increase sewer utility rates, which has not been updated since 2018. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Stanton Gregor, seconded by member Tremblay. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes. Okay, with that, I'd like to take a, let's say, 5 to 10 minute break, 5 minutes hopefully. I'm sorry to keep you here, audience, but I think this might be a lengthy. It is. Oh, perfect. Okay, the assembly meeting is back in session, and our next item on the agenda is under old business or unfinished business. That's ordinance 2022-07. This is an ordinance adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. It's the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Tremblay. Discussion. Member Lynn.
Mr. Mayor, I have two motions I'd like to make. First one, and I'll take them one at a time. The first one has to do with the electrical fund budget. And that will be there was one of the salaries of one of the employees that got inadvertently missed through the whole thing. So and what I'm going to do is I will read part of the code, 500110, salaries to increase to $820,053. 500120, overtime to increase to $52,659. And 500200, benefits to increase to $530,306.
I will second that amendment to the budget.
Okay, motion been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Stanton Gregor, and there's an explanation memo from Utility Director Hagerman, explains it, just a little oversight, and so it should have been in the budget, and now we're trying to make it so. So any discussion on that amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay, Mark.
Yes. Okay, member Lynn, you had a second?
I do. I move to set aside $40,000 from the lost revenue ARPA fund to fund preparation of grant applications that may arise for infrastructure and other borough development opportunities.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by member Lynn and seconded by member Kensinger. So your proposal is to take $40,000 from the ARPA funds?
To set aside $40,000. Let me explain it a little bit. Is that, with the infrastructure bill out there and we've been reported to us that there's quite a few agencies going to have money available at which we could apply for. I've had conversations both with the manager and with Liz that if those opportunities come available, we will need a grant writer, or we need somebody really to put it together for us. For instance, Liz tells me that if you looked at doing the grant writing, say for the Scal Bay Harbor, if we were doing that, you're looking at about $10,000 because a very complicated one, according from Liz's perspective. And so All I'm asking to do at this point is to earmark that money to give the manager the option. And in talking with the manager, what he tells me that if those opportunities would become available, obviously before they would spend any money on a grant, he will come back and get approval from the assembly. All I'm asking is for that money to be set aside for that purpose if we need it.
The money is already, in a sense, in the bank.
It's in the ARPA
ARPA
account,
fund.
yes, and it's, yes.
Any other discussion on that proposal, that proposed amendment? Budget member Mutry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So is this to fund somebody as a grant writer, or is this what will the $40,000 cover?
$40,000 if the opportunity comes available for us to prepare grants. That money is available to the manager, one, to either contract for a grant writer, to hire somebody to do it at the time we're doing for those particular grants. But it's once he gets the approval, it's his decision how he wants to proceed. It's just money set aside for that purpose, so he doesn't have to come back all the time and argue with us that he needs more money.
So there is no specific
Right.
issue for that or topic for that money to be used for now. It's just
Yeah.
earmarked
That's
to be used at the manager's discretion if we need to do a grant.
That's correct. And the money doesn't get spent unless that need's there.
Member Manager Giesberg.
Yes, sir.
Want to add to this?
Yeah, normally what we would do in a situation like that is we come across a grant that has some promise. We would bring that to the assembly to say, would you like us to apply for this? This is what it's all about. We can handle it ourselves, or in some cases, we may not be able to. And we found a grant writer to do this. Or in some cases, and Liz has made this real clear to me, right now, finding grant writers is really difficult. So it may not even be a position where we can find somebody to help us with the grant. But having it kind of, as some member Lynn said, kind of set aside in the likelihood of maybe finding somebody at the right time when we need somebody, being able to use that. And we would come to the assembly to get, authorization to move forward with something like that. But that makes any sense or makes more sense.
And just for clarify, if the public's listening, was it $800,000 in the ARPA or is it budget? Balance?
Oh, it's in there now.
So we have two ARPA grants. The one that Assemblymember Lynn is referring to is the lost revenue one. That was the 1.5 million, and the 800,000 approximately was going to the hospital. We have 329,000 available in the general fund of that grant that's unallocated for anything at the moment. So I think he's proposing to use that, correct?
Kind of wanted clarification for the listening public. Member Stan Gregor.
Yeah, I'll be voting for this amendment. I like the logic behind it. And one, if the opportunity does not present itself, the money doesn't get spent, but having, for lack of a better term, shovel-ready money to put towards something that could really benefit our communities strikes me as a good way of being proactive. Thank you, Member Lynn, for bringing this one forward.
Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, clerk call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Any other discussion of proposed amendments? Member Tremblay.
I'd like to propose an amendment. I'd like to add a $40,000 grant to Humanity in Progress from the American Rescue Plan ARPA fund. That is funds needed to be spent by December 31st, 2024.
I'll second it.
Motion been made by Member Tremblay, seconded by Member Bucci, and I believe you're referring to the request for $40,000 in grant funds from the borough to the community service budget. The application is attached, and so there's been a motion and a second discussion. Member Lynn.
I read the application. One of the things is, I think it was 22,500 of that went to hire a person. And in that discussion is that they intended to have us continue to fund that over the years, is the way I read that. I can't support that part of it, so I'll vote no on it. If Member Tremblay was willing to go back to the 17.5 for the particular services it provided, I could support that.
Yeah, just to make it clear, I did read that this request was to be funded annually and just, I don't think the current seated assembly can hold the next assembly, hostage to that annual thing. The budget's discussed annually, so that'd be an annual appropriation and with a request from, during the community services part of the budget. Member Stan Gregor.
Yeah, just a point of clarification from Member Tremblay if she's able, and if not, I can turn to Jody. In terms of where those from ARPA funds you wanted to grab that from? Okay, thought I just want to make sure I heard you right. Thank you.
Generally, I ask the finance director when the KFSK or the museum, where they apply for these community service budgets, these grants. The deadline is March, but maybe this is a fairly new organization that was just formed. Seeing how our budget is $250,000, Manager Giesbrecht, is that what we're taking out of the general fund to balance our
I
current
think
budget?
it's 265.
Correct.
Yeah.
This would put us up to 300,000, even if we have $1 million, et cetera, in ARPA money. I mean, that's 3 years of that spending, that money's gone. So I'm not sure that I will support this addition to the community services budget. That's just my thought. Member Stanton Gregor?
Member Tremblay's ahead of me. Go ahead.
Go ahead, I recognize you, please.
Fair enough. Well, my heartache with it, I don't know if it's heartache's the right word, is that it's an annual request that's larger than any other request in the community services budget. KFSK, as we know, provides us with a ton of direct services to the borough itself, and they also do a pile of other fundraising, which luckily they're very good at. Mountain View Food Service recoup some funds we give to them in community service, through the meals. My concern is that this large of a number will be, if we do make this an annual thing, we'll end up drawing from reserves, which means it's not a sustainable ask unless we can find a way to make it sustainable. If Member Tremblay wants to touch on it, or if any other members have a solution on it, I will gladly entertain it. Otherwise, in this reading, based on that, I'll be voting no, but would be willing to entertain that of a sustainable fashion for that funding to be found by the third reading. Thank you.
Tremblay?
Thank you. I hear the heartache and I'd like to address a little bit of it and then make an amendment to my own amendment. I understand it is an initial request. It's a first request. All the requests that are in the community fund had to come first at some point. So this is also something that is not necessarily widely advertised as a funding opportunity for nonprofits in town. You have to be kind of in the know to get the application for that. So when we had our housing meeting and it was clear that HIP could use a more sustainable local funding source and that they are not receiving this application, that's when I asked for it to be sent to them. So they were unaware of their potential eligibility for this. That's why we didn't get it in advance. The reason why I'm suggesting the ARPA funds to use for this initial ask is that because it is initial, it'll be a trial year. So hearing the concerns, I'll be making an amendment to adjust to $17,500 for the request. And I hope that they are able to use that to leverage as evidence of local support into finding funding for, it's tough. People don't want to fund positions and they don't want to fund infrastructure, but those are the things that keep these kinds of programs sustainable. But as for the overall need for this, those other groups that get funded through this do provide day-to-day, basic, really, really important service to the community. And I can't think of anything that's more important than providing bags of food, 400 bags. Let's see, I don't want to get that wrong, 400 bags a month, plus the meals, plus helping people stay in their homes or move into homes that are a healthier answer for where people are currently finding shelter. So that's why I thought it was important to get the application to them and to bring us forward. On that note, I'll make a motion to amend my ask to $17,500 for Humanity in Progress, still from the ARPA American Rescue Plan 286 fund.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Seconded. Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci, you had a comment? You had your
Yeah,
hand up.
so do we vote the first one down and then come back and, or what's the best way to?
I think we're on the second amendment to move it to 17,500.
Okay, great.
Kinzinger.
Yes, no, I will support this. And yes, thank you for that amendment. I did have a heartburn funding a position. I know it's important. I think the money that we spend on this is going to save us money in other costs from other departments. So I think it's money well spent.
Member Sandberger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is why I was going to yield to Member Tremblay before is that answers my question. And in that form, I feel very comfortable supporting that. Thank you for taking that tack. That makes sense to me.
Any other discussion on this amendment to lower the grant request to 17,500? Clerk, call a roll on that amendment, please.
David,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, back to the amendment to the budget as amended. Moving the request from 40,000 down to 17,500. We still need to vote on that, I believe, don't we, Clerk Thompson, to fund this?
The 40,000?
To fund this 17,500. We voted to reduce it. We haven't.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the $17,500 grant request.
So move.
Second.
Excuse me. Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Tremblay. Any discussion on this amount being allocated to Humanity in Progress for this year?
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark, David,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob, Jay,
Okay, that passes with a 6-1 vote with the mayor voting no. That brings us back to any proposed amendments to the second reading of the budget. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the police department, under professional services, I'd like to add $25,000 to professional services line item to be taken out of the general fund reserves.
What page is the police? But I can find it, probably on the bottom of the. Bottom
I
right.
just have a,
Oh. I will find it. The second after finance.
Then I will second it for the sake of discussion as that, to get that ball rolling.
So is there a second to that motion?
I just did.
Okay. For the motion and the second, I'm just trying to find the police budget here so I could look exactly what line item it is.
I think it's page 28,
28.
28 in our packet.
May I have the floor, Mr. Mayor, while you're finding that?
I found it. Yes, you can.
Thank you, sir. Since it was define professional services, if you could, and what the, I imagine you have, there's something you're thinking with it, just to help me understand the context, please.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you. This evening, we heard from a bunch of folks in town who were concerned that about cutting the police department. We heard people talking about not cutting the police department. We want a fully functional police department. We don't want an overworked police department. We don't want to cut additional positions. Over the last couple of months, I've been talking to the chief and the city manager about how the police department works. I was given 120 pages of call reports and jail visits for the last 5 years and trying to sort all that out. And so over the last couple of weeks since the last meeting, I've talked to communities in Alaska, Dutch Harbor, Bristol Bay Borough, City and Borough of Haines, and they've all done more or less audits of the police department to make sure that we have enough of what we need to take care of the community needs. Part of an audit would be a review of the policy and operational manual of the police department. Looking at the training and professional development of the patrol, dispatch, and administration. Look at the duties of the patrol, dispatch, and administration. Go over the scheduling review to make sure that we have enough staff to take care of the needs of the community. Look at the crime and motor vehicle statistics. Look at a yearly trend or yearly numbers. with trends so that we can be looking forward to the police department. I don't like them also to look at the evidence handling and property management. I'd like them to look at record management, the hiring procedures, on the patrols, vehicle and foot patrols, community interface, and an inspection of facilities and holding rooms and property rooms. I would, if we pass this addition to this, the professional services, I would leave it to the city manager to, and I guess the police chief to come up with the scope of work that they would like to see looked at. But I think we've had the Public Safety Advisory Board look at a few things, but that doesn't seem to be working as well as a Public Safety Advisory Board would work. I don't think the assembly should be faulted for asking questions about departments. I've spent a lot of time with the police department, riding along, talking to dispatch and all the police officers, and people think, you heard earlier about cutting the police department. I have never been involved at an assembly meeting about cutting the police department. We all support the police department, and by asking questions regarding a department, I don't think that should be an indication that you don't support this department or the other. And I think an independent review of what's going on so we can have a better way of making decisions up here. If we're going to be funding other police officers, currently we're missing a sergeant and possibly a police officer. And if there's issues that are causing us not to fill those positions, we need to address those positions, just like we did dispatch. You know, we spent $191,000 back in February trying to hire more dispatchers, retain more police officers, and that seems to kind of work. So I think we need to kind of be proactive.
I think the discussion, excuse me, Member Mutrick, should be to the amendment that you've made
Sure.
to add, how much did you want to add?
25,000.
25,000,
Yep.
doubling basically the professional services
Yep.
for this year.
Yep, but that's up to the city manager to come up with the number. I just threw that number in there just to kind of see what we can come up with. If he can do it for less, that would be great, but I don't have a real number to throw in there. I just put that in there as a placeholder. Thank you.
So the amendment that we have on the floor, just what we're discussing is to add $25,000 to the services and charges section of the police budget, and that's professional services. So, Member Stanton Gregory.
Unless anyone else wanted to go, it already spoken. Okay, a question for the manager, if I might. And I don't know, Chief, maybe if you need to chime in, but I'll start with Steve. Is this something you feel like we need?
Well, I actually heard a couple things. So some member Mucci talked about an independent review.
Yeah.
So an independent review would mean hiring somebody from outside the borough to do it. That's independent, is not Public Safety Advisory Board or me or Jim.
No, professional auditor, I follow you.
Just 25,000 is probably half of what it would probably take, although I don't know that. We don't generally go out there. And to answer your question directly, no, I don't think we need it. But I'm not the ones that are asking questions either. I mean, Jim and his staff has answered the questions I have very well. And we've attempted to answer those questions for a couple of assembly members, and we haven't seemed to be able to nail that down. So maybe it's my communication style or Jim's or whatever, but I mean, it'd be nice to get these questions answered and be done with them, rather than it being an issue on multiple meetings.
Thank you for your clarifying that. And the reason I'm asking is, I've been in those same meetings and heard some of the same banter on that, and we're in dialogue, and we hire you to manage the borough, and which means manage Chief Kerr. And by you telling me that that's not something you feel like we need right now in terms of for you to manage that department. I mean, there's a couple of things in play there. Yeah, to do professional audit, it's gonna be more than 25, but I follow your thinking. It strikes me as a solution looking for a problem. So I will not be supporting this amendment, money to the budget to review the police department, and I appreciate your candor, Manager Giesbrecht.
Any other assembly members? Member Kinsinger.
The police department budget is a little bit over $2 million. We spend about $2 million on public education in town. I supported a 10% increase, close to $200,000 several meetings ago for additional compensation to dispatchers and police officers as a mean to retain employees. And this is a problem that was brought up by Chief Kerr. And at the time, my wish had been to have the Public Safety Advisory Board take a look at it. And the Public Safety Advisory Board is just like all the other boards that are duly elected in town with citizens to look at issues. But that wasn't the will of my colleagues on the assembly. And instead, Steve took it upon himself, and Debbie, and they did a very good job coming back with the proposal that they came back with. And I thought it addressed the issue, which we were at a crisis point. We were down to 2 dispatchers. You suggested that we need to have 5. So we have been losing police officers. And my concern was also from a meeting was that at a meeting was that police officers would leave if they weren't compensated enough and that we weren't providing them enough compensation. So that's why I supported additional compensation, because it's a very expensive process to bring somebody online and to have them trained. I'd like to keep the people that we have here in town by properly compensating them. And my concern has always been and part of that process, and I think this is where I have a disagreement, obviously, with quite a few members of the community and the manager, is that what I also wanted to see and my question was not answered, and that's what I would hope to see from this, is do we have enough police officers? Do we have too many police officers? Is there a better way to do it? And, you know, this is something that's done all over the place. It's a very common thing to do, is to take a look. It's just like wastewater department, electrical department, sewage department. I'm sure that Carl and Chris could have come up with how much more money we needed in rate increase. But by going out, having somebody from the outside come in, take a look and see really what are the needs of the department, an objective outside look at it. And then they're able to come back to us and say, look, we need more money to make this work. That's all I'm asking here for right now. As a result of this process, we could possibly come back and say that we need to have additional officers or that we need to increase our compensation. That's my feeling, is that we probably right now are on the low end of the compensation for the officers that we currently have. I feel we made the adequate increases in salary for the dispatchers, but I'm still have that question about police officers. I can look at the numbers that were presented on what other communities are paying, and we're not paying enough. We're not giving enough in benefits. So it's not a matter of whether you support the police or don't support the police. What I want to see is a process where I want to have somebody else outside take a look at this and just say, can we do this better? Are we doing it right?
Excuse me, Member Kinsler, on the amendment to add $25,000 to the budget.
I would say that the $25,000 that I'm requesting to add to the budget would help answer the question, which if I could get this added to the budget, I will support the budget.
Okay, well, it was Member Mucci's proposal, but okay, so I see where you're coming from. Any other discussion on this amendment to add $25,000 to this line item, police budget? I believe that's where we're at. Member Wall, fine, Wall.
I'll make this quick. I can't support this based on the response we've heard from Steve and we've heard from Chief Kerr in the past. I just don't see that $20,000 or whatever it turns out being money well spent. I mean, doesn't sound like there's much appetite for it there. And there's a lot of other places we could use it. So I hate to just throw away $20,000 for, I don't really see what the reason would be.
Any other input on this amendment to add $25,000 to the professional services line item in the police budget? Seeing none, will the clerk call a roll on that amendment?
Thomas,
No.
Chelsea,
No.
Bob,
No.
Jeff,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
No.
Mark,
No. Okay, that proposed amendment fails with a 5-2 vote with members Kinsinger and Mucci in support of the added $25,000 to that line item. Is there any other proposed amendments to the budget tonight? Member Stanton Gregor.
Not an amendment, just a comment on the budget for the discussion portion that I mentioned in the first reading. My appreciation to the department heads, Director Tao and Manager Giesbrecht for doing their best to deal with increasing costs, increasing cost of healthcare, increasing costs in lots of things to bring us a balanced, very close to balanced budget. We're not drawing far from reserves. I recognize the work you guys put into this, and I know it was not easy, especially when you have 7 of us who have different things that are important to us. So I'll be voting yes on the second reading, and I appreciate all of your efforts.
Any other discussion on the second reading of the budget as it has been amended? Clerk, call the roll. Oh, member Feinhoff, sorry.
Yeah, no amendments, more discussion. I guess I had some questions. Superintendent Klupainer, is she here?
No,
No, that's not, no, it's not. Okay. Okay, well then I'll make a brief comment here. I guess I can't support the budget as it's currently. My concern is primarily with the relationship between how much we're spending on police and how much we're spending for our schools. I see an increase in the police budget year after year. And we made a small increase for the schools here recently, but we haven't for the last decade. And as I understand it, our school is in a bit of a situation on the basis that we've dropped under an important threshold of students, and we may lose a substantial amount of our state funding, which could lead to substantial increases in the cost of providing schooling here in town. And I'm not convinced this budget. I mean, we're already digging into the general fund to pay for things, and it doesn't seem like we really have a clear way to finance the additional expenses that are coming down the pipe for the school yet. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Comments? Any other input on the assembly on the second reading? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jeff, Bob,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Thomas.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, the second reading of the 2022-2023 budget passes with a 5-2 vote with member Walsh and member Mucci opposed. That brings us to new business, item 15. Item A is a resolution 2022-08, a resolution encouraging the prompt and full closure and cleanup of the Tosqua Chief Mine and urging the BC government to oppose any extension to the receivership process. I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by member Stanton Gregor, seconded by member Tremblay, and I'm glad Mr. Zimmer called in and gave an explanation. So we've talked about this. Member Kinsinger and I talked about it briefly before the meeting, how many times we're going to address this, and it sounds like there's a new topic here. So anyway, that's my input. Any other discussion? Member Tremblay?
Thank you. As the assembly member that put on the agenda, that I'd put in my 2 cents that when it comes to these kinds of big things like a mine polluting a river, it's in the details. And so hopefully showing that we're still paying attention even at this close to what could be the end of a certain chapter. We see this passing, and yeah, we see other communities joining us.
Other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea, Mark,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes. Okay, so we will be sending that resolution. Item B, Mountain View Manor Assisted Living Services. Assemblymember Lynn requests the Assembly direct Manager Giesbrecht to research and enter into discussions with the Petersburg Medical Center to share resources and combine efforts in providing services at the borough's Mountain View Manor Assisted Living Facility. I'd entertain a motion to approve this direction to the manager.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Mucci. Discussion.
Yeah, just a brief explanation. As most of you know, we've been having problems getting help for at least 4 or 5 years. We haven't been full at Mountain View Manor. And, we've continually subsidized about $250,000 a year to the system. One of the things in discussions, I've had discussions with the hospital board, and the hospital board would also, along with this, would like to see us enter into discussions where we look at changes in management, or at least sharing management in some form of that facility, the assisted living facility. And what this would do is give the manager authority to go work with with Mr. Hofstadter to come back to both the hospital board and to us with a proposal of how that would be managed, how it be either transferred, be managed in some way by the hospital and so forth. But anyhow, it would give him the authority. And in discussion, and if I might, Manager Griesbeck, would you weigh in a little bit on it, if you will, about
Well, I mean, I just want to say this. We have the best assisted living facility in the state of Alaska, and it's the best run as well. So I don't anticipate having any problems with how we do things. Assembly-member Lynn is correct in that we're having a staffing problem. It's not just there, it's throughout the borough, as well as the community. And that is having an impact on the services we offer. So, you know, I'm talking to the hospital, particularly I'd like to pick Dr. Heyer's brain, who spent a tremendous amount of time learning from Sheilin on how that facility is run and giving us advice on how hospitals are run. And I think she may have some really valid points on, you know, are there things we could do differently or better? By the way, again, I'll say it, we have the best run assisted living facility in the state of Alaska. I don't expect, but it doesn't hurt when it comes to the hospital side of it for us to understand more. And maybe there are things we could do to work better with the hospital. It's a huge undertaking because I don't really even know what it looks like quite at this point. You know, I think we need to talk to Dr. Heyer first, and I need to, you know, circle back with Sheilin and then start from that, start having ideas about, you know, are there things we could share or do that would save us both money, and particularly staffing is a problem for me. And Sheilin has said several times, you know, hospital stealing our people. I mean, I use that term loosely, you know, because they need people. And, you know, we could do the same thing. I could come back to the assembly and argue with you guys and say, let's pay them more, and we're taking people away. We're not doing the community any good if we just keep moving people back and forth because of salaries. So that's an example of something that we need to talk about and find out, you know, maybe it's a better career path or a different career path that encourages people to come through a process that helps both organizations, not just one or the other. So anyway, I mean, I think it's worth talking about. But I think it starts with, you know, conversations with people like Dr. Heyer, who spent a tremendous amount of time up there with Sheilin, learning about how we do business up there and helping us learn about the hospital. So, anyway, hope that's what you were looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Simple answer. Looking for an opportunity to partner with one of our other, with our healthcare facility here in town. The parallels are many. And I really just look forward to you keeping us posted. Like you said, it's going to be a big process, a lot of learning. And I think it's what's the right way to phrase it? A great dialogue to open and see where it takes us. So Member Lynn, I appreciate you putting this on the agenda. This could be really a good opportunity for partnership. Thanks.
Any other discussion? I could, you know, I'm kind of not concerned, but it'll be interesting to stay updated on this. My concern, I guess, would be if there was, Member Lynn mentioned management. And I don't know if we want, if that's the best thing for our borough-owned assisted living to be co-managed with a medical center and the assisted living, which the manager stated is the best run facility in the state. So I guess the manager will be keeping us surprised. I don't know. You know, I could understand why it'd be nice to have, you know, if we're short on nurses up there, and if they had a spare nurse or two, they could go up and perform duties. I could, you know, go along with that. But this would be something that you're just going to research and find out what's available, and it would come back before the assembly, definitely before anything was done, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Member Tremblay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to everyone who brought this forward. I think it makes all the sense in the world as we are a community with a rapidly aging segment, excuse me. You're aging slowly, but there's a large group of you that are, and so facilitating more cooperation between these institutions seem really important. And timing wise, it seems important to get it started as we're still in formulation stage of new hospital. And so figuring out, or just keeping conversation going about what those kinds of services will be both at that facility as well as what we are currently having in the borough. And yeah, just thank you everyone for putting your thinking caps on for this. I'm excited to see what comes from it.
Kinsinger.
No, I think it's a good idea to start the discussion. It's not obligating us to anything.
No other discussion. I'll have the clerk call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay, Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Okay, so keep us posted. Next item, C, Early Childhood Education Task Force appointments. We picked today to appoint people that were interested, and it says we shall appoint interested persons to the newly created Early Childhood Education Task Force. As of the date of publishing this agenda, letters of interest have been received from the following. Excuse me if I mispronounce your name. Katie Holman, Denise Kubernick, Chad Wright, Jeff Mucci, Jessica Doral, Charlotte Mamoy, Becky Turlin, Stephanie Payne, Chelsea Tremblay, Glorianne Mullen, and Hannah Floor. Thank you to those 12 for putting their names in. So without objection by the Assembly, I'd like to appoint these 12 volunteers to our Childhood Education Task Force.
A point of clarification.
Yeah.
While we're doing this, should we appoint a chair to this group as well?
Could be something they potentially do amongst themselves. Isn't that what some of our advisory boards do? Clerk Thompson, can you?
I'm sorry.
Member Stanton Gregor's question was, should we appoint a chair to this? Or should that be something that the members of the board do?
I guess I would leave that up to you.
Who appoints the Parks and Rec Board chair? Who appoints the?
It is done after the election each year. They choose a chair.
Oh, anyway, member.
Yeah, the only reason I was questioning that is I think these more specialized ones, like one that jumps out at me from like about 8 years ago was we had a temporary task force like the marijuana commission in town that was appointed beforehand. And I'm cool with however the
That's
assembly
true, it
wants to do it.
was.
It's more of a process question than anything.
Yes. So it is up to you guys. That is true. The marijuana committee,
Shall we?
it was appointed ahead.
Do you wanna make a motion to appoint a chair? And then we could, Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it'd be good for the group to kind of, that you just appointed to kind of get together and see what everybody's availability is and make sure that everybody can put as much time into it as they want, and then let this group come up with a chair. That would be my preference. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to move to appoint Member Tremblay as the chair because somebody's got to run the meeting. Somebody's got to be responsible. And I think that would be an excellent, I think Member Tremblay would be an excellent choice to do that.
And that,
Any discussion on that? We've already kind of, Member Stanton Gregor.
Sorry, I'm grabbing the mic here. I just wanted to make sure you would be okay in that role, Member Tremblay. I didn't want you to be volunteered for something you weren't up for.
Thank you for the kind words. I'm happy to do this role, and I'm grateful that Member Mucci will be on the task force with me. We can tag team as needed. If any of us miss a meeting, the other one will be there. So, yeah.
Okay, so clerk call the roll on the appointment of the chair.
Jeff,
yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark, Jay,
Yes.
Okay, on to appointing the 12 members with their new leader. Any other discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a new task force. Now, capital projects process work session. Assemblymember Mucci requests a work session to discuss updates to and the process for capital project needs list. State of Alaska CAPSIS, ADOT needs list, federal priorities list. I'd entertain a motion to set up a work session.
So move.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Member Mucci, since you asked for this
Can I-
item, would you like?
Could I jump in just to defend Jeff? This was not 100% his idea. It's a good idea, but it was more me. Jeff and I met in passing, talking about this needs list issue. And I was trying to explain the whole process. And he promptly told me I was trying to explain way too much and that maybe this is worthy of a work session to try to make sense of how we do capital projects. So I don't want him taking the fall for having a work session. So I can speak to it, which is this needs list is something that Assemblymember Lynn came across working with DOT, something we have not looked at the entire time I've been here. I've never heard of it before. If you want something to get on the state transportation plan, which is called the STIP, it has to be on the needs list, which makes the needs list really important. So how do we figure that out? And what does the Assembly want to do with capital projects in general? And how do we want to talk through? Because there's things on some of these lists that not all of you know what they are. And so maybe a work session that allows staff and I to explain what these projects are and where they come from. And then at some point later, the Assembly can weigh in and say, take that one off. That one's a good one. And that's why the work session idea is that it seems to be a lot to try to do that in a regular Assembly meeting. So anyway.
Having years ago worked with the state STIP process, it's a Byzantine process, but it's an important process. And to be on the optimistic trend, a person at DOT explained to me that this is your opportunity to tell us when we're doing something that doesn't make any sense. To put it on the unoptimistic process, this is also the process where DOT can do things that they think we need done that we really don't like. So it's important that we put our 2 cents in. Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Steve, for throwing me that life preserver. That was great. Yeah, when I saw this list, I was going Kupernoff shuttle ferry. I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea again. And then there's the Wrangell Narrows shuttle ferry. And, you know, we heard from somebody tonight who wants to get the potholes paved in town. And we're talking about putting streetlights maybe down Papke's or taking over the Papke's Road. So, you know, all these acronyms are really cool, but I think it would be interesting to know what they all mean, how the process works, and not have anything on this list that might get funded because we submitted it 15 or 20 years ago. So that's the purpose of my idea for the, not my idea, but the work session in general, trying to at least bring some clarity into what we have on the list, because if the money's out there and somebody decides, oh yeah, Petersburg wants to put a Kupernoff shuttle ferry terminal in because it's on your list, well, we better make sure that we're behind it. And yeah, that's the purpose of my idea. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've established the need for the work session. Now it comes to the scheduling side of it. Is there a better time for the people who will be receiving this for us to have it done an outside imposed deadline, or is this a rolling need thing? Because I'm thinking about, you know, the mayor travels in summertime, so I'm thinking that early fall might be a better time. Please tell us if there's anything we need to consider.
Through the mayor, CAPSIS is generally done in the fall, early winter. That's about the same time we end up doing the Washington DC priority list as well. The needs list does not appear to have a set time frame, although I'm still trying to get that information from ADOT. Doing it in the fall would be fine, at least what I know. If I get more information, I may come back to the Assembly and say the fall's not going to work. We have to do it faster. But for the moment, I'm not getting any direction. The current needs list, which I think I've sent out to you in email, it's been there for a very long time and it's not been updated by the borough in all that time. We're not even sure who put those things on the needs list. So I think we've got time, I guess.
Put a date on it. I can't remember discussing it, and it's almost 15 years. I've been on the council assemblies. Remember, Lynn?
When I brought the subject up on the needs list, the reason I brought it up is simply because I didn't realize we hadn't updated, but my understanding was, talking with those folks, that there is a considerable amount of infrastructure money coming to them through this. And that's why I was hoping, you know, I'd like to see it updated, but I'm like the manager. I don't know enough to really say one way or another, you know, when it's important or goes. But I think we need to continue to, chase that rabbit, see what we need to do.
Needs list, excuse me, is totally different than CAPS's. going to
And they
the
don't
state.
talk to each other.
No. Nice. Member Kinsinger.
DOT won't do anything unless it's on the STIP. And whatever you have to do to get an item on the STIP, that's what you have to do if DOT is going to fund it. And whether you go through the CAPSIS process or any other process, it's Byzantine. And you're correct, they don't talk to each other, but a lot of this stuff gets put on by our legislators. And a lot of times that gets put on without consultation with the community that it's affecting. And that's where it's important for us to have better communication with our legislators to let them know what our priorities are. And just dealing with DOT in years past, they live and die by the STEP. So if we want to improve anything in town that DOT is going to touch, whether it's Pappy Stock, Scout Bay, road improvements, street lighting, however minor, however major, we have to get it on STEP. So this is something we've really been negligent on. And right now it's important because there is a lot of money out there. The state right now, they're talking about spending a whole lot of money on capital projects that they haven't talked about for years since the price of oil is high. So I think urgency is more important than waiting for the fall.
Set a date.
Just to jump in, I'm on vacation from the 9th of June to the 20th of June. So either we do it really soon or you do it without me, or do it after I get back. It's a trip I can't cancel.
Or should you?
So we have I think we kind of have a consensus that we need to address this, but we don't really have a firm date after the manager returns, July. Open-ended. Talk about it again, or let's pick a date.
Turn again.
20th, late afternoon, Jet.
So we have an assembly meeting the evening of June 20th. And the rest of the week is open. If you guys want to have a work session that week.
How long do we think this work session would take? Just throwing that out there. I mean, you're gonna dig into it some more and try to figure out what this animal really is.
Yes, sir. And what I was planning was to explain what each of these three lists are, when we use them, and how items get on the list, and and have department heads go through, what are these projects that are listed? So that includes the CAPSIS list. So, this is, what's a good capital project in Parks and Rec, Stephanie?
Oh, why you gotta throw me under like that?
But wait, totem poles at Sandy Beach. I mean, what is that? What's everybody thinking, and why is that on there? So then the assembly can say, okay, now I understand what that project is. And then at a future meeting, we would ask the assembly to say yes or no, leave it there, take it off.
Sounds to me like the only thing that really needs anything of urgency that needs to be updated is the needs list.
Correct.
I mean, the rest of it's on land.
You are correct.
So
The rest could last. until
21st,
later.
6 p.m.
Will that be too soon for you? Just getting back the 21st?
No, because I can do all the prep work before I leave.
Okay, proposed date again?
Tuesday, June 21st, 6 p.m. I just made that up out of nowhere to get the ball rolling, but I'm open to whatever.
Yeah, that's where we've got a proposal. Since we're voting on this, I can't second anything. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. Does that date work? June 21st at 6 p.m.
I won't be here.
Would you be able to call in?
No.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Well, I don't,
It'll be on Zoom though, right? We can do a Zoom recording of it, can't we?
Yes.
So that way you can watch it later. If for any of us who couldn't attend whatever day it gets done.
It does look like the assembly chambers is open through the rest of June.
When would you be available, Bob?
we could do it, if you wanted to go 21st, I could possibly do a Zoom if you want to pull that, or the following week, 27th or 28th.
If it pleases the rest of the assembly, I propose that we do it on the 27th to so that we all can be here.
Sure.
Okay. All those in favor of June 27th at 6 PM for this update meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I might be fishing, but I'll try to keep abreast of what's going on. Okay, next item, communications. We listed correspondence received since April 28th on today's agenda. It's on the Borough website. So that's where you could find it. And item 17, assembly discussion items. We've had a couple of amendments to the agenda. Bob Lynn, member Lynn, I should say, wants to, I guess we can't take action here, but just discuss ending the comment period for Papke's.
Yes. I'm looking for, I guess, the will of the assembly. We've had the comment period open for I believe the 9th of May or something like that. And I'm looking to, when do we want to, I'd like to see the manager, go forward with some close date. Maybe at the next meeting or before, there's a possibility. Or if the assembly members have a different idea, that would be great too. But we have a month that we've had a comment period open. Probably time to bring that to a close.
Any other input on that discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you. Have we had any input or any comments on the?
Help from George Cole, I believe.
I've had at least 5 meetings out there with at least 40 different folks. So yes, I've had meetings with comments on it.
Yeah, I was just curious what the comments were. I mean, I would just, did we see those comments? Or how do-
Just kind of offhand, I've been writing them up. I was going to give them to the manager. The common theme is that folks would like to see this in a phasing process, that they want to see fixed, first of all, what's there without in a phase, and then go beyond that and move up. That would be my first one. The second common theme is to keep the existing ramp that's there. Don't change it. The third comment is they would like to see essentially that whole area taken over, which is what the manager's working on. But overall, I don't hear a big push to, spend the kind of money and go full plan. More of a phasing process now, and I've been writing that up as I get the comments from, from folks who have talked to me out there. And they've had some outstanding ideas, way different than what we have on our plans. But anyhow, I'll write it up and provide it to the manager, and he can do what he wants to with it. And I'm still open for the front room meetings and the coffee meetings out there.
Thank you.
It'd be nice if, when we come to make an official decision on this, if the people that have these comments either come and testify in assembly chambers, or call in, or
Yes.
so, yeah, that would make me feel better.
Mayor
So,
Jensen, I have also received email comments that I'm keeping in a file. So it just, whenever everybody's ready to see them, I will share.
Great. Okay, so is there any more discussion on that? Member Von Walsh?
Yeah, just a quick question. I've also received some comment on the Papke's situation. I wonder, Manager Giesberg, could you clear up? There was some confusion as to whether or not the existing drive down ramps could be used, or we needed to, as I understood it, the understanding initially was that they could not be used, and that was why the development focused on the area south of them. But now it turns out that they can be used, that the lease with the Forest Service is no longer active. Is that the case, or?
Through the mayor. So the Forest Service is out of it. They no longer have an active lease on that property. The condition of the ramps depends on who you speak to. Some people say it needs to be longer for all tides. Other people have said, no, it's fine as it is. But the one thing I caution the assembly when you get all this is, there's a lot of push to do something at Papke's. We don't want to fall into the trap of saying something is better than nothing. So let's just agree to do the smaller scale stuff. The folks in the community have to make those calls, but we have to design a project that is good for a long period of time. And, and to be honest with you, DNR wants to see that project plan all the way through, or they won't approve giving the borough the tidelands. So That's going to be the process. So when you stop taking comments, it's then going to be this, how do you want to approach whose comments we ask Alan to change and whose we say, no, we're not interested in that. And that's an assembly level decision. That's one of the things I would bring to the assembly to say, okay, we've got all these comments now. Which ones how do you want to handle them? Do you want the harbor board? Do you want Bob? Do you want the assembly itself to decide which of these comments get moved into the plan or which ones are tossed out? And so that's one of those questions that the assembly will have to answer. What's that process going to be? Just like we've done projects, building this building and stuff. Who's going to be the project manager? Who's going to just make those decisions? Is it the assembly? Is it, well, I mean, could be, but that's going to be up to you guys.
I'm going to put it back on track for a process question. Clerk Thompson, if you know how, is there any sort of, how do we pick an end date for it? Do we need to vote on it as an action item at the next meeting? Like, what's the cleanest way to pick an end date for this, whenever said date is?
So Member Lynn and I discussed this earlier because it wasn't on the agenda
Yep.
as an action item.
Yep.
And I had thought that possibly you all would say, yeah, the second meeting in June makes sense. Let's just make it be so and not really have to vote on it. But if it's not that easy, then maybe it should be on the next agenda to pick an end date.
Sounds great. Let's do that unless somebody has an objection. Put it on the next agenda. Yeah, could you do that?
As an action item.
If you would, Clerk Thompson?
Yep, you
Thank
bet.
Public's notified and they get a chance to comment. Okay, we have one other, is that the end of the discussion on the PAPKES deadline? Okay. I have another amendment. Member Mucci wants to talk about a letter to National Geographic from us in the chamber, or just us, telling them, welcome to town.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I don't know if the letter is the proper way to go about it, but if the city manager or borough manager is willing to actively engage with that Geo and the other boats with the chamber or just by himself, I think something needs to happen sooner than later. We understand we've all been dealing with it for a week, and I don't want to wait another 2 weeks to get a letter out. I think it should be something that should happen sooner than later. And I don't know the best way to do that. Maybe I'll ask Steve what he thinks or whatever.
Brimley first.
Thank you. I thought I would add some context. For those who don't know, I've been a day labor kind of contractor through Viking Travel with National Geographic and Lindblad since 2014. That's where I met my current spouse, who's been on and off with the company since 2016 as a current full-time employee. So I know a little bit about their policy, and I'm interested that we're talking about it at this level. They don't let folks off the boats anywhere. Bahamas, Baja, San Diego, Seattle, crew included, stay on the boats. This is very much their policy. So if you've heard that it's specific to our hospital, I don't know where you're getting that information, but the crew would have loved a day off in San Diego or Seattle or any of those other places, not to mention the passengers. So it is true that they do have crew or have passengers that embark and disembark in Sitka and or Juneau, depending, they all have different schedules and places, but they ask their passengers to do a 5-day quarantine prior to getting onto the boat best they can, especially given the state of masking on federal travel transportation options anymore. Not everybody follows through with that, obviously, but that is still something that they ask. And if people come up positive, they're not allowed on the boat. It's, we took your money, but okay, don't quote me on that. I'm going to get myself in trouble. So I just thought that'd be a good context to add into this conversation. I would love to see my friends wandering through town. They are a company like any other company dealing with staffing issues, both in numbers and in morale with who's there. So they would benefit from coming into town. I just don't know, so if we could be a chink in the armor that would get this policy changed, I would like that. I'm not sure. So I don't mean to puncture a bubble, but I just thought this was worthy information for us to have as a group before we got too ahead of ourselves. And if anyone has any questions about what my interactions with them have been like, I'm happy to help. Like I used to go onto the boats and help them, and I don't now, that kind of stuff. So my own work situation with them has changed with this. And And I would love to see their corporate policy change, but I'm not sure what it'll take. So I'm feeling people's frustrations. 2 boats will be coming through regularly. The other 2, even prior to COVID, had kind of shifted their schedule to not be coming to town as often. And so maybe some things will change midsummer, and all the boats that had started to come to Alaska were not coming full capacity, including the large ships to Juneau. So this is a broader system thing that's happening as well. Again, very frustrating. And I wish we had a magic bullet to solve the problem. I don't know if we do.
So Manager Giesbrecht, it sounds like you've made some headway and, coming up with an answer why it's like this. I mean,
Yeah, and the hospital is still working on it from their perspective. Again, just there's no borough policy that's causing this. As Member Tremblay said, this is a corporate policy among those folks. And, it's never a bad idea to send a welcome letter, say, hey, we'd love to have you here. I mean, it's just, we have to know if we're asking them to change a policy, we have to know we're talking to the right person. And, Dave Berg's working on that. I've received a couple of emails I've been tracking during the meeting even. And he's trying to set up a meeting, and they would prefer meeting with just Dave, not borough staff at the moment. So maybe we'll get pulled into it, but I'm reading the email from Dave, and his contact is saying, hey, let's get together tomorrow afternoon and talk. So I'll keep talking with Dave. I'll keep talking about the issue. Hopefully we can find somebody that is in a decision-making position that I can speak to. And like I said, I'm more than happy to write a letter that says we want you here and we like having you here. But changing their policy is not going to be an easy thing. And I don't think even the assembly is going to have much luck getting that changed. So.
I understand the frustration from the business owners on Main Street. You have people come to town, and if they're not let off the ship, that's not, and if it's not because of a policy we have, then there's nothing that we can control. That doesn't appear like so.
And it doesn't appear to be a problem caused by the hospital either, is what we're seeing. Is this is outside of Petersburg.
So does the assembly think we should just, maybe we could discuss it again if there's new information comes up, or how should we approach it? I know time's ticking and ships are going to be coming and going, but if that's the reason that we're not seeing their passengers walking around town, we can't change that. Remember Stanton?
Yeah, I believe when you were talking about earlier, Steve, you said if any new information comes to pass, you're going to pass it on to us so we can take action as needed. So I mean, my take is just follow your lead. As new information comes in,
anybody I can work with,
pass it on.
Glenn, did you have a comment?
I had about the same one that Member Stan Greger had in the hospital in my discussions today with him, and so is the manager, is that the problem's way beyond our ability here in Petersburg.
Okay, so that's the end of the discussion items. Now it's time for assembly member comments. Any assembly members have comments?
Quick comment. I want to thank Parks and Rec Advisory Board Chair for coming here and sharing the information about the trails. I know they've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes here recently with the Borough and PIA trying to get this project back on track. And personally, I'm really excited about it. I love the idea of more trails in Petersburg. I know how much people love walking up the Ravens Roost Trail. So I hope we hear more about that in the future.
Any other assembly members have comments? Recognitions. Do you have a comment?
No recognition, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Any recognitions? Any staff have any recognitions?
Yes, Sandy Dixon, Fire EMS Director. This week, May 15th through the 21st is EMS Appreciation Week. So if you know or see any emergency medical services volunteer in town, please pat them on the back and tell them thank you for their service.
Okay, great. Any other recognitions by assembly members or staff? Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody who put their name in for the Early Childhood Education Task Force. I hope that we have a good conversation as a group, and I know that your time is precious and we will make the most of it. And then second, I'd like to thank Humanity in Progress. If anybody, this is a group of individuals who saw a need in the community that was not being met by standing institutions and are volunteering their very dear, precious time to try to help meet that need. And if you are moved and would like to donate or figure out a way to help, their contact information is board@psghumanity.org. And yeah, they're doing really important work and I'm grateful for the level of support we were able to do today, but there is a lot more to do. So if you're interested in that, please join them. And I'm just very grateful for everything they do for us.
Any more recognitions?
I have one. James Kerr, Chief of Police. I want to thank the community and the business owners for showing up tonight and voicing their support for the police department. The members of the police department and myself greatly appreciate it.
Okay, any other recognitions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was your longest meeting.